Was obviously quite busy in October. It's our busiest time of year. Every 4 years we get slammed, and we don't do much report writing for about 3 to 4 months out of that year. You were informed of that when you came in to do it, that there would be a slight delay. We did have it on track always for February 19th, so this was never going to go to March. This was always the date. It was submitted for financial approval at the start of February, as is the required county process. The deputy clerk oversaw the report and oversaw the timeline, so it was overseen, and I certainly didn't know that there was an issue until it was raised this week. My staff just submitted the report to me, and I did it. So if I'd known that there was an urgency earlier, I would have requested that she fast-track this a bit more. My apologies. Just to go over the report that's before you. To begin with, I'd like to thank Mr. Proctor, Bright, and Watt for coming today. We really appreciate your comments. To provide council some background on taxis, in 2015, Norfolk County undertook a taxi safety blitz, to which we invited Tillsonburg to participate as well. Previous to this, all safety blitzes were done by the MTO. However, they discontinued providing that service in 2007, so it had been 8 years approximately without a safety blitz. In 2015, we found a lot of issues. Some vehicles were unfit for the road, some were filthy, some had empty liquor bottles in them. The blitz was a success, and during our annual licensing process, we got clear safeties on all these vehicles. So it's 3 months later after we've got a clear safety, and we had to pull 3 cars off the road that day. So it showed us that some of the mechanics reviewing these weren't doing the best review. What we took away from 2015 was we set some policy objectives that were included in Council's harmonized business licensing bylaw. So what we did with our policy objectives were we tried to ensure the taxis were clean, they were safe, and that the drivers had cleaner criminal records. The taxi industries have been phenomenal in assisting us and achieving this. I can't say enough about the work that they've done. If you think about the taxis that were on our roads 4 years ago and the nice, clean-looking taxis that we have out there now, it is just terrific. Given the amount of investment that the taxi industry has to make to get new vehicles on the road, because we changed the policy to require that vehicles over the 8 years of age couldn't be on the road, and gave taxi drivers 2 years notice of this, taxi companies, 2 years notice of this. It was a big change for the taxi industry, and we received no negative feedback in all the pre-consultation that we did to this. So they were very much on board and really helpful in getting this done, and we really appreciate it because it's significantly raised the bar. We did not increase meter rates. Meter rates have been the same since, I believe, 2004 for taxis. They're similar to what they are in Brantford, but still the taxi industry might have a case here for saying to us that we might need to increase rates. There's some general concern with the changes that we made that came into effect in January of 2017 that taxi numbers might decline in the municipality. So we didn't do anything too proactive after that because we were putting more on them in terms of fleet and staff, so we were concerned that we would see a reduction in the amount of taxi services in Norfolk County. So that's why we're now surprised somewhat to be faced here with having too many taxi companies, because we've actually been putting more requirements on them, and they still seem to be growing very much. One of the reasons for that might be is that the municipality is likely, as a consolidated service manager, one of their largest customers, and that is something that is a reality here in Norfolk County. There is definitely a shortage of taxi services when you look at the lakeshore areas. We're never probably going to get anybody to set up a taxi company in Port Rowan. There are ideas that we can think about incentivizing that to get to that, but the reality is that medical transport trips to the methadone clinics are a lot of the business of these taxi companies. I have no idea how much, but that is a major share of the revenue for all these taxi companies that we have here. And as you all know, the Doug Ford government has just recently announced that there could be changes coming in this area. So there is going to be a lot of potential uncertainty for the taxi industries coming up within the next year. So there is a lot of stuff that my office specifically wants to talk to the taxi industries about and kind of working out what options are going to be happening or what policy options we can look to support them going into the future, because we understand that they have done great work. And one of the challenges that you've heard tonight is that they have a problem with getting staff. That's something we're very well aware of, and we need to do something to fix that for them. It is up to council to determine whether or not to approve. My office generally, our bylaw is permissive, and so my office generally would not ever recommend refusal unless there is a criminal record or something of that nature on it. So we generally will recommend approval. If you are going to deny, what you want to consider in that is that you have to give some reasoning for denial. The current and upcoming uncertainty around the consolidated service management and medical transports could be a potential reason. And so that is something that you consider. Essentially as well, it's also important to note that under Section 156 of the Municipal Act, we're quite limited in what we can do in terms of transportation for those that have physical, emotional, or mental disabilities. So there are some general restrictions for medical transport around municipalities of what we can do in terms of taxi licensing. And with that, I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
Questions for the clerk? Any questions? Don't see any hands up here, so there is a recommendation on page 41 of the agenda package, or page 3 of 3, the report. Where do you want to go? Councilor Rabbits.
Thank you, Chairman Columbus. I'm prepared to move the staff recommendation on page 41 of our agenda as printed to approve.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councilor Huffman is the seconder. Okay, I will read the recommendation as printed. That staff report CAO 19-07, application for taxi cab owners license 2199990, Ontario Inc., be received as information, and that Norfolk County Council approve a new taxi cab owner's license to Mr. Rennie Watt, subject to the fulfillment of requirements of the Harmonized Business Licensing Bylaw 2016-92 as amended. Any discussion? See any discussion? Those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming forward with your deputations. And as you heard, there will be likely some discussion coming up in the near future with respect to licensing of cabs. Moving on in the agenda, we'll go to number 7. Which one's that?
The closed session.
Do you want to do that? Okay. Nicholas is the
Closed session.
appointment report.
No,
No, we'll keep going. Okay. Is there, do we have to have a meeting or something? Yeah. Okay, there are a couple items, communication items that are in your package. The one is relating to the Meisner Dam, Mr. George Gibbons and Mr. Ron Keating, pages 47 and 49. Can I have a mover and a seconder to receive those communications? Councilor Martin moves and Councilor Rabbit seconds. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And now we'll go to Economic Development Strategy interim recommendations on page 41 of the agenda package. And I believe we've got Mr. Clark Hoskin here to report on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm really excited to be here today to present this interim report to Council and Committee and get any feedback that you may have. This is the first time that these recommendations have been into the public, apart from the various ideas that people have tabled, either through the 1,000+ survey responses we received online, another 500 responses for another survey, and the 10 roundtables that we held in the fall that engaged about 150 additional people one-on-one. So a lot of that feedback has been distilled into this report. I'm not going to obviously go into a lot of detail. I just want to share with you the fact that the various reports that help shape the main interim recommendations are all attachments. the survey analysis, the analysis of the values survey, which is more of a quantitative survey, as well as the roundtable feedback. And in the case of the roundtable, a number of people have asked me, why is the text different colors? If you participated in one of the roundtables, each group got its own color of marker, and so we wanted to just identify that that was showing different types of feedback, and in some cases, alternative views on different topics. So all of that information is in the report as attachments, and then on page 84 of your council agenda is where the actual interim recommendations are there. There's 3 or 4 pages of them. But really there's 3 strategic directions. The first being growing and diversifying our population. The second one being helping make our entrepreneurs more successful. And thirdly, harnessing community energy to improve our spaces. And the way I look at this, it's kind of from the perspective of looking at the people of Norfolk County, the businesses of Norfolk County, and the spaces and places of Norfolk County. And so under each one of those interim recommendations, there are some more specific ideas. Workforce issues are very, very important to our employers right now, and so they feature prominently in a lot of the recommendations, as you'll see, as well as our population issues around attracting new residents, diversifying our population, that type of thing. Under entrepreneurs, I think it was no surprise that we got a lot of feedback about streamlining our processes and creating things like the Green Light team that was recently announced. So the main recommendation there being around improving municipal regulations and processes and communication is an obvious direction to go in. But we do also want to support existing growth businesses in a number of ways and attract emerging industries that can bring new jobs and new wealth to the community. And then the third area about harnessing community energy is really around our spaces. And I didn't want to just focus in on downtowns because it isn't just about downtowns, it's about all parts of Norfolk County. It could be parking issues in one community, it could be a hamlet issue, but really it's about working with business and government working together, getting our citizens more involved in projects, and then obviously putting a focus on our downtowns to turn them into attractive places to visit and invest. So those are the key recommendations in this report. Each one of these sub-recommendations we could talk about for an hour. Each one of them is very important. What we're hoping to do next is to, after getting council's sort of implicit approval that it's okay to move ahead with sharing this with the public, is to come up with a way to prioritize some of these ideas, because we won't be able to do all of them tomorrow. But we might want to start moving them into sort of short, medium, and long-term categories. So with that, in terms of next steps, so on page 88 of your agenda, basically we're here today to receive feedback from yourselves. Next, we want to share these strategic directions with the general public and get their feedback. And of course, we'll be reaching out to all the people who attended roundtables. We have an email subscription list of almost 250 people who actively want to hear about things that are happening strategic-wise in Norfolk County, so we'll be sharing it with them. Based on that type of feedback, revising and prioritizing these recommendations, and then I'd like to bring this back in May to Council to get your final endorsement on it so that we can move towards implementation. I don't want this to sit on a shelf. I want to see us act upon it. And also to remind ourselves that it's about what we can do as a community, not waiting for someone else to ride in on the white horse and solve it for us. We're going to have to do it ourselves, collaborate, work together, and try to make some change. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions that council might have.
Okay, you've done a good job summarizing 178 pages in 8 minutes. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, I just wanted to start off by saying that I thought this was phenomenal. I participated in the roundtable and I saw a few other council members' names that made it out, but I was a part of the process, and then seeing it, like, this is a gold mine. I could go through here and pull so many motions and just would love to get my hands all over it. So kudos to you and your team and the department. I love this. Maybe a comment to our clerk's office that I would, in the future, like to see maybe a colored copy for us, because some of the charts and whatnot, I couldn't quite put what shade was where, and as well with the font as well. I did think some of it was concerning, some of it, dealt with previous council, but the perception that the public was having, or didn't feel as though they had active or respectful dialogue with council, that's really concerning. So again, this just validates how important this information is to do something with it and move forward. But this is the most grassroots report we could possibly get our hands on. This speaks to residents and business owners living in Norfolk County who have these great ideas to make change in our community. So my only comments to you would just be, how do you recommend, or how would you suggest going about prioritizing and condensing this, and where does it go from there? Because I'm very keen to help.
Through the chair, that's wonderful support. Thanks for all the comments you made there. In terms of getting that next step, in terms of prioritizing and that feedback, there are a number of ways. Two of them include some recommendations later in their meeting about our advisory boards. So getting our advisory boards back up and active again, that will be one angle. So we'll definitely be taking these recommendations to the Tourism and ECDEV Advisory Board and the Agriculture Advisory Board. I would hope to do another kind of online survey that basically takes a lot of these recommendations and asks people to put their kind of respective priorities or ranking on them, so that we can get a larger group of people giving us some feedback. And then finally, probably a couple of additional roundtables, likely not in the same format as what you experienced, because that was more of a brainstorming format of a roundtable, but more of a more focused, let's decide what we're doing, and getting people to narrow it down and focus it. And then once we get all that feedback, we'll put it back in a report, hopefully shorter than this one, and get it to you guys, and then you can give us your thoughts.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Huffman?
Thank you, Chairman Columbus. Through you to Clark. I just wanted to ask a couple questions. So some of these were obviously information that was gathered, correct? So the one where like the housing alternatives and things like the public amenities for individuals, disabled persons, beach improvements, etc. So will those pieces of information been shared with the proper kind of departments in Norfolk County, or not yet?
Through the chair, so Councillor Huffman, yes, the interim report in its draft form was shared with our technical advisory committee, which includes other departments.
Okay.
So we did have a number of general managers and directors who were around the table and saw those ideas, and they actually gave some really great feedback around what they thought would fly and what might not.
Okay.
So I think one of the next steps will be to get down in those weeds a bit more and get more feedback. I should have mentioned the next round would be more kind of department colleague feedback, because we want to make sure that they don't feel that they were left out of the process or that there wasn't enough time to discuss it. You're right, I think there's a lot of meat in here that we need to explore more. So it isn't just as easy as writing improve our beaches. There's a lot of stuff behind that,
Well,
right?
and like you, some of it, I don't want it to sit on a shelf and get lost in the shuffle, because I think some of these, we've asked for community feedback, so obviously it's something that, we need to
And
take seriously.
if I could add too, through the chair, the third section of the recommendations around harnessing community energy, I would implore council to use the model that if someone says they have a good idea to improve the community, then say, well, then step up and help, because the only way we're really going to get a lot of this done is to rely on community energy, to get those volunteers behind it. And I know that that's a strain, that there's a lot of volunteers, there's issues with volunteers, but I always believe that people really believe in something, they're going to get behind it, and they're going to try to help make it happen.
Absolutely. And just a couple other things. So I just wanted to point out too, on page, I believe, 86 or 32, whichever one, I just wanted to say 3, attracting emergency industries. 8, develop outdoor concert venues that are compatible with existing residents. That is a wonderful news for me in Ward 7 because I know we have Whistling Gardens out there, so that's something that I'm looking forward to assisting with them, expanding on that. And the other thing I was just wondering is 2 things, actually. One, I know that we've had the roundtables, and I've attended as well, and I'm just wondering, have we ever done a roundtable instead of them coming to us, we're going to them? Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? So in terms of, let's say, instead of hosting a round table where we advertise and put out like all youth between 18 and 25, show up at the library and we'll do a round table. Have we ever kind of hosted the round table at a demographic where the youth are already there? And it would be the same, I guess, for seniors, or instead of us asking them to come to us, we go to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, through the chair, I think that I think the feedback we got on roundtables was very positive. People, for the most part, really got something out of them. So if there was a group that wanted to, hold a roundtable, it's not a difficult process to do. It would really be a case of where it would fit into the work plan, and strategically it might be more appropriate, for example, if there was a health or social services related issue, that we would lean on our health and social services folks to maybe do that, for example. But yeah, I think we can be flexible about how we get feedback, definitely.
Okay. Yeah, because I think the feedback, like this is amazing. Same as Councillor Martin, I could sit and read through all of this and come up with all kinds of ideas, and I had planter boxes going here and lights going there, all of that kind of stuff you get going. But I do notice that often when we have these kinds of things, not just Norfolk County, but typically, like you said, volunteer bases, they tend to be the same group of people over and over. So it's always the same parents who attend the school trips, those types of things. So I know that there were a lot of familiar faces at the round table. So I just wanted to kind of see if we could branch out in as many ways possible for that. And there was one more piece, and I can't remember what it was. Oh, it is on topic, but I've noticed as a person who lives in Norfolk County that some businesses receive like a lot more advertising or mention than other businesses. Is that a separate entity where they pay additional dollars for advertising through Norfolk County?
Through the chair, from our tourism perspective, we have the Tourism Marketing Partnership Program that was approved by council back 15 years ago. So it is an additional annual fee that separates certain types of businesses for additional services. It's like $179 a year. I think council just approved a slight increase to that fee.
Okay.
That program is currently in place. We have reviewed it over the past couple of years to try to figure out how to do it better. I think as we move forward in our implementation, I may be coming to you with some suggestions on that program to see what we want to do with it, because I believe that maybe moving beyond just the tourism industry would be a good idea, and we may not necessarily want to charge people for it. So figuring out some alternative to that, I think, is a next step for sure.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Clark.
Okay.
Any further questions with respect to this report? Councillor Van Passen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. More of a comment. One of the numbers I pulled out on these surveys is over 80% of the people surveyed considered either agriculture or farming to be the greatest strength of Norfolk County. I also pulled out a line here that I'd like to read, and it's sort of a quote-unquote, if MPAC and the taxes associated with changing to an agritourism and diversified farm use can be nurtured. Maybe we can remember that when we get into the tax class discussions on the ratios for property taxes on farmland. The two seem to fit very well in my mind.
I just noticed your question at the end there, Councillor Van Passen. Okay, No more hands up. So I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation as printed. Counselor Taylor moves and Counselor Martin seconds that council receive report number DCS 19-14 as information. Further discussion, those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Moving on to the next report, an application with respect to from Signum Wireless at 591 Norfolk Street South, telecommunication tower. Who is leading this discussion? Shannon Van Dalen? Okay. You're going to use the board, are you? Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Councillor Columbus, members of council, staff. This presentation and report is in conjunction with a proposed telecommunications tower that's being proposed at the property at 591 Norfolk Street in Simcoe. These are Norfolk County lands. However, the application is being proposed by Fontour International. And this is part of the public process in terms of establishment of telecommunications towers for the purpose of completing the towers protocol in conjunction with Industry Canada requirements. This is the public meeting as portion to it, and there was an open house that was held in January with respect to this proposal. The application has been reviewed against kind of the county policies, and staff have no concerns with it. There was also no major objections to the proposed tower location, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank
Questions
you.
for Ms. Van Dalen? Mayor Chop.
Just, were there any objections to it at the public meeting?
There was one person who attended, however, it was more of a general inquiry as opposed to any objections or concerns against it. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Councilor Van Passen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did anybody get a hold of Fred Judd and make sure that he is aware of this? They just have the new dairy barn is right beside there, right? That
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm not aware of specific if he was notified. However, as part of the process, there is public circulation that gets circulated to adjacent properties.
and if I read this report right, and it's my understanding, like we don't have any say in whether it goes there or not. That's the federal government that gets to tell us whether we can have it or whether it goes there or not, right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. This is part of the public process as part of it, but the kind of end decision does come down to Industry Canada.
Any other questions? I do have a couple. First one, the road that accesses this particular site, is it a municipal right-of-way owned by the county? Or is it private, or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you to Chris Baird, who has noted that it is a private lane that extends past Norfolk Street.
And who owns it then?
It's Norfolk County.
Norfolk County? So would they have to have a right-of-way? Telecommunication people have to have a right-of-way over this roadway to service the site?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and please, if I'm on the correct track here, I believe as part of it, there's a lease agreement that is established, so a lot of those details will be ironed out. But this is the first step in terms of creating the recognition for the telecommunications tower, and then through due process, they'll go through the lease agreement.
Okay, and what kind of income would the county be receiving for having this tower on site?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe that question would be better answered by Mr. Johnson, but I believe, again, that will be kind of determined through due course in terms of the establishment of the lease.
Mr. Johnson?
Through you, Mr. Chair. It depends on the lease agreement. I wouldn't be able to hazard an estimate on what the lease amounts would be. However, that information would be forthcoming at the next report.
Okay, perhaps this is the question to you also. In dealing with towers, a tower goes up, which this one's 230 feet roughly, and the owner of that tower then leases other companies to use that tower. Would we be receiving an income from all the other users that hook up to that tower. I know in the past, there have been towers go up where, by Rogers and Bell, where they actually add other dishes to that tower, and there's more income to be coming forward.
Through you, Mr. Chair, from the knowledge that I have of the towers, the income that we would get is strictly through the lease agreement, and I would have to look into answering the rest of your question.
Perhaps we can incorporate that into the lease agreement when it comes forward. Okay. Anything else? Yes, Councilor Shelley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess this is a question for Shannon, if I can ask through the chair. The purpose of this tower is to upgrade service in Simcoe and it says the surrounding area. Do we know what the limit of the surrounding area is?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I do not have that information. I know the proponent is here as well to answer any questions, and that question might be better directed to him.
Okay. And am I able to ask him that question?
Through you, Mr. Chair, you would have to pass a motion to waive the rules of order to allow somebody to come forward to speak. So that'd be a 2/3.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I can, the reason I just want to ask is I want to know if this tower will improve telecommunications services for those people who currently don't have very good service.
Okay, I think your answer is yes, but can I have a... If we get 2/3 support, I can have the gentleman come to the podium. We need 2/3 support to suspend the rules of order. Okay? Do we need a mover and a seconder? Mover and a seconder, Mayor Chop and Councilor Martin. Those in favor to suspend the rules of order, that's carried. Now we'll have the gentleman come up representing the tower company. If you could state your name, please, and the company you represent. Yep, just push it.
I'm Evan Trunan of Fontour International. We're the consultant for Signum Wireless on this project, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yes, Councilor Shelley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Evan, I guess my question is, how far is the reach of this tower that's going to upgrade service to the existing customers?
Yes, so that varies primarily on two factors. So since this is a third-party tower, it will depend on which carriers decide to lease space off of it, which we are in talks with them right now. In radio frequency engineering, I'm a planner, but the ranges can vary considerably, but generally the taller the tower, the longer the range. What it would mainly do would be relieve telecommunications, like signal, the load off of other towers, so they'll be able to go farther and also receive more data. Because as an antenna receives more information, the area it covers shrinks because it starts prioritizing closer and closer signal sources, so phones. So if someone makes a call at the base of the tower, someone at the other end might get their call dropped.
So, Evan, what I'm taking from what you're mentioning is that with this tower being completed, we should see less complaints by county residents that they no longer live in the various dead zones that we have. There should be improvements in those areas.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions for this gentleman? No? Thank you very much. You may be seated.
Thank you.
Any other questions with respect to the report? Okay, there is a recommendation printed on page 237 of our agenda package. Councilor Rabbits moves it. Councilor Taylor seconds it. That application by Fontour International respecting lands described as Part Lot 1, Concession 4, urban area of Simcoe, Norfolk County, 591 Norfolk Street South, file number RPT PL 2018-261 be received as information for reasons set out in the report number DCS 19-31, and that the Corporation of Norfolk County has no objections to the location of the telecommunication tower affecting lands described as Part Lot 1, Concession 4, urban area of Simcoe, Norfolk County, 591 Norfolk Street South. Any further discussion? Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Shannon. And now we'll move to speed limit reductions on Highway 59 North, Delhi, and Norfolk County Road 13 in Cortland. This is a Public Works report. Mr. Baird.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Council. First of our three reports here this evening deal with speed limit reductions. Two locations. The first one, Highway 59 North, which runs out of Delhi from Highway 3. And that's shown on page 258 of your agenda. There's a key map there. The second location, if you look on the following page, on page 259, deals with the second amendment that we're proposing this evening. And this has been in consultation with the Ministry of Transportation. Norfolk County Road 13, which extends northward from Highway 3 in the Cortland area. We've been requested by the ministry to consider reducing that speed limit in that approach to coincide with proposed reconstruction of that intersection in 2020. Norfolk County Council has the ability to pass municipal bylaws that regulate speed limits so that they are enforceable under the Highway Traffic Act. Both locations have been reviewed by staff, and they do meet the warrant criteria for the reductions, and they are here before you for your consideration.
Questions with respect to these two zones on just north of Highway 3? Councilor Geisens?
Well, I can't say much about 59, but I certainly can about County Road 13 out in Cortland, I guess. Theoretically, it's a good thing to do because there's a lot of people in there, or not businesses, I guess was what I want to say. So I'm all in favor of doing it. I'd like to move the what is it here? The recommendations. Thank you.
You're the mover?
Yes.
Okay. Mayor Chop, I saw your hand up. No? Councilor Rabbits? Well, you're the seconder. Okay, good. So I'll read the recommendation that staff report PW 19-10, speed limit reductions, Highway 59 in Delhi and Norfolk County Road 13 in Cortland be received as information, and that Norfolk County Council execute a bylaw authorizing road staff to post a 60-kilometer-per-hour speed zone on Highway 59 from the center line of Talbot Road to 1 kilometer north of Talbot Road. And further, that Norfolk County Council execute a bylaw authorizing road staff to post a 60-kilometer-per-hour speed zone on Norfolk County Road 13 from the center line of Main Street of Cortland to Plowman's Line. Those in favor? That is carried too. Thank you. Just want to mention, we've been waiting for this for quite some time. The Scott's plant, sometimes there are 130 tractor trailer loads a day coming out of there. It's been a dangerous situation, and there's a residential housing subdivision to the east of that road, and we've been getting a lot of complaints about the speed and the danger of traffic in that area. Councilor Van Passen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While we're on the subject, I've had quite a few questions about Highway 3 on the south edge of Delhi between the 60-kilometer zone and the intersection, or the stoplight by Van and Bushes. And I think that's an MTO road, so maybe when you're talking to them, could we see if that meets the criteria to lower that speed limit a little bit as well?
Okay,
for all of the same reasons here?
Perhaps help you out there. There has been a rash of accidents on that stretch, and I know Mr. Baird is quite aware of it. There's a request. I'll let him chime in on this. I think the request has gone into MTO. We're just waiting for an answer back.
You're correct, Mr. Chairman. Councilor Van Passen, that's right. We have got the MTO looking into that stretch. There is quite a bit of development residential on there and some businesses that have created some problems. So when we get their feedback, because it is their corridor, that's when the highway becomes provincially managed. We'll get that information back to council for a decision or share that with you.
Okay. Now, the clerk and I have been communicating here with respect to going in camera about 4:45. and then our solicitor, county solicitor can leave, and we'll deal with the applications for various committees later on in the meeting. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, so we'll move on to composting services for leaf and yard waste, and this is Mr. Chris Baird's department again.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Before I introduce the report, I'd like to introduce you to Marissa Bakla. Marissa's joined us this evening. It's the first time many of you have had a chance to meet her. Marissa is our waste management supervisor, works in the Delhi office. She's responsible for all the waste collection contracts, the recycling, leaf and yard waste, our transfer stations, and the household hazardous waste collection program. She's got a big portfolio and she does a great job. She's a local girl who was a summer student and went on to further education, further her career, and she's come back to work with us, and we're very fortunate to have her on our team. So Marissa authored this report. I'll just touch on it briefly, and if there's any technical questions, we'll certainly refer to Marissa. The county has a leaf and yard waste composting program that is operated in 11 urban communities and hamlets for 6 weeks in the spring and 6 weeks in the fall. Last year, we diverted approximately 1,800 tons of leaf and yard waste that was collected, composted, and diverted from landfill. We're fortunate to have a local compost facility in Norfolk County, T. DeVos Trucking Limited, and we do have contracted trucks that pick up the leaf and yard waste during that spring and fall time frame and take it directly to our local site for composting. The current contract wraps up the end of March, so we are in a bit of a tight time frame. We've come to you this evening to seek your consideration of a sole source extension, a 2-year extension to March 31st, 2021, for a number of reasons, primarily cost savings, having a local contractor, and not having to haul with a third party outside of Norfolk County. We think it represents good business and good value. We've had 5 years of perfect service with no comments or concerns raised. So with that, I'm glad to answer any questions, as is Marissa.
Questions for Mr. Baird? Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Baird, on the campaign, I heard from Port Dover residents who were actually interested, sorry, I can't quite see you, but actually interested in, I try to make it easy, actually interested in additional pickup dates. Would this be appropriate timing to have that conversation with the supplier or whichever supplier we go forward with?
Through the chair, your timing's impeccable. Tomorrow, when we go through our operating budget, you will see the leaf and yard waste program there. We do have some suggestions. There was a proposal by the former council to extend that program in the spring and fall for a few additional weeks. That would be the perfect time to talk about that. And if, in fact, if there is cost savings on contrary to perhaps what you're suggesting right now, that would be a perfect time to talk about it. But we're certainly able to do so tonight if you wish.
Okay. Mayor Chop?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Baird, what is the current contract price per ton on the compost?
Through the chair, it's $32 a ton right now, and that price would continue on.
And what does it cost to send material to the landfill?
I'm going to let our in-house expert answer those questions if you don't mind.
Through the chair to Mayor Chop, currently our curbside garbage is going to the incinerator in Brampton called Emerald, and that's a cost is $88 a ton, plus trucking is $49 a ton.
Thanks. And is there, through you, Mr. Chair, is there a reason that we wouldn't put this out to tender? I've received actually quite a few concerns from residents about this contract, and that they're questioning why. I think it's been on the same contract for many years, is it not? And do we have a formal contract with the company, or?
So through the chair to Mayor Chop, we do. In 2014, it did go out for tender. I believe there was 3 companies that bid on it. with T. DeVos being the lowest compliant bidder. So one of the challenges we have right now in Norfolk County is a consolidation point to be able to consolidate the loads. Currently, we're able to deliver leaf and yard waste material curbside from the trucks directly to T. DeVos Trucking in Langton, which is a cost savings to us as we don't have to consolidate and truck those loads. As I mentioned, it's $49 a ton right now to truck our curbside garbage to the incinerator in Brampton. So we would have that additional charge on top of the $32 a ton for composting.
Okay. Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, the extension of the contract, you were looking to 2021, correct?
That's correct.
Is there a restriction on that we might be able to just extend it for a year so we could revisit this and possibly put it out to tender in a year's time?
Sure, we could look at doing it in a year. The reason why we were looking at 2021 is right now under the Waste Free Ontario Act, there was some policy statements and more information that was probably coming down the line within the next coming years. Some of that had been stalled with the changeover in government, but there was going to be some more information as to an organics plan and things like that that may be additional information and change in our program.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I guess that's just part of my concern as well, is locking us into a situation. I don't mind waiving the rules and you know, not putting something out to tender if there's a valid reason for it, but I just don't know in this case that, I don't know, I haven't really heard of a clear reason as to why, you know, we wouldn't put this out to tender.
So through you, Mr. Chair, additionally, if we were to have a consolidation point, which we currently don't have, it would have to be a regulated site through the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. And to put through that application, there's almost a year backlog right now, so we would have that challenge. Additionally, if we were to act as a consolidation point, we would have to have space amend our current operating permit, plus potentially add some asphalt pad area, which would come at an additional cost.
I would be willing to support the extension, Mr. Chair, for a year. So when it comes time, I'd like to just amend the recommendation.
Councillor Van Passen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Martin brought up the extension of the leaf pickup, and I was wondering why we can't cut it back. Like, the leaves fall off the trees, they rake them up. Is it cheaper to pick them up, like only to have 4 trips out there instead of 6, or 4 weeks available instead of 6, or doesn't it really make any difference how many times you go back and forth and load up yard waste?
Through the chair to Councillor Van Passen. So currently, the collection is based on a per ton basis, so it just depends on the volume that we receive from residents putting material out at the curbside for leaf and yard waste.
Okay. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a note while Marissa's here, I didn't want to lose this opportunity. I don't know if it's appropriate at all with this contract, although I'm just not sure of the services in its entirety, but I would also be interested in maybe having a conversation at a later date about other compost pickups and looking at green initiatives here in Norfolk County, because there was a lot of feedback about that as well over the campaign trail. I don't know if that has much to do with this particular contract or not.
Through the chair to Councillor Martin. So if you're looking in terms of like a green bin organics collection program, that's not really this per se, but we can chat at another time, or if you want to give me a call, we can definitely chat about it more.
Okay. Anything further? No. Okay, there is a recommendation on the floor. The mayor had mentioned that she'd like a change there, but the recommendation is printed in front of you. Is there a mover and a seconder for that recommendation that's printed? I don't see one, so Mayor Chop, would you like to make your recommendation and see if there's a seconder?
Let's see here, just that we would be effective from April 1st, 2019 to March 31st, 2020.
just that one change on that second
Correct.
paragraph? Right?
Oh, and the second clause as well, sorry, the third paragraph as well, March 31st, 2020. Thank you, Councilor Rabbits.
Okay. Okay, so Mayor Chops moved that. Councilor Rabbit seconds it. Okay, I will read it as changed. That staff report PW 1913, composting services for leaf and yard waste be received as information, and that council permit a single source supply as outlined in Norfolk County Purchasing Policy, ECS-02, Section 4.8.4, for composting services from T. DeVos Trucking Limited for leaf and yard waste for a one-year period, term effective April 1st, 2019 to March 31st, 2020, and further that the General Manager of Public Works be authorized to execute an agreement with T. DeVos Trucking Limited for leaf and yard waste composting services for the period April 1st, 2019 to March 31st, 2020 at the cost of $32 per ton, and further that the proposed 2019 levy-supported operating budget be amended to include an additional $14,600 for leaf and yard waste composting. Mayor Chop.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I just actually, if we could get a little bit more clarification on that 14,600. I, read above that the advantage of this is consolidation, and yet the increase in cost to our operating budget is just confusing me a bit.
Sure, through the chair to Mayor Chop. The reason for the increase of the $14,000 is actually because we received 500 tons of an increase last year in material that came through. So based on 2017 numbers, it was budgeted for $44,000, but based on 2018 numbers, we saw an increase of 500 tons, which is the increase which we're asking for of the $14,600.
Okay. The recommendation's been duly moved and seconded. Those in favor? That is carried. Okay, we're going to take a little bit of time before 5 o'clock here to go in camera. I need a mover and a seconder for this recommendation that pursuant to Section 239 C, E, and F of the Municipal Act 2001, SO 2001 C25, as the subject matter pertains to a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Mover? Councillor Martin. And seconded by Councillor Taylor. Those in favor? Okay. We should not be too long. Is the solicitor close by? Oh, there he is right there. Okay.
On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong hard work, we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger along. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger along. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger along. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger along. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. of Norfolk, Norfolk.